All right, Jon Clements here. It's 24 hours after our previous Fruit Twilight meeting on Tuesday, April 13th. It's now Wednesday, April 14th. I'm out in the same place in the orchard. I did not have a chance last night to kind of tell you a few things I wanted to. It was cloudy, so you could see me, but now the sun's coming out, as you can see, but oh well. I got one guest here, Win Cowgill. I think he's here.
Yeah, hi,
I
John.
asked him if he wanted to, hi Win, if he wants to comment on anything. So there's a few things I wanted to cover. No PowerPoint, don't worry. But I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my desktop and go through a few things, okay? And my internet connection seems a little flaky. I don't really want you to see my email. Win, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
All right. So what was I going to talk about first? I already forgot.
I think
I
you're
was
going to talk about
our web.
your New England fruit guide would be a good topic.
No, I'm going to talk about pre-bloom foliar nutrient applications, the nutrient cocktail. And I'm going to go to our website here, and under publications, we have fact sheets. All right. If you scroll down the fact sheets, we have a fact sheet on pre-bloom nutrient applications for apples. Okay. If you click on the PDF link, I think my internet is a little slow. You know, I got this new computer back in January and it's giving me fits. All right, we have this fact sheet. So the basic formula, the cocktail, is nitrogen. And this old fact sheet says use urea, 3 pounds per 100 gallons dilute. Boron, it specifies solubor. And we're not gonna worry about that. Copper spray should have already gone on. I'm not gonna worry about that. And zinc. Right, Win, the pre-bloom nutrient cocktail at tight cluster, the pink.
Well, there's different timings depending what you do, and there's at least one other caveat that's very important that's developed since Wes wrote that years ago.
Well, hold on a second.
You
Hold
can
on
actually
a second.
do those
Right?
twice, John. If you've got some cold or winter injury, you put the first application of zinc and boron on at tight cluster, and then you could come back at pink again for a double shot if you've got injury. If you don't think you've got any injury, and nobody down my way does, then you just use the 3 anywhere between tight cluster and pink.
So do you use the full rate both times?
Well, yeah, you actually can put it on twice if you really think you have injury. But the one caveat is if you're using Apogee or prohexidine, which is Apogee or Kudos at pink, you can't put the boron component at pink. They can't go together. Boron can reduce the effectiveness of Apogee. So if you're doing this pre-bloom cocktail, think about getting your boron on before pink, like at tight cluster or half-inch green.
Or you can wait and put your Apogee on a little later.
Well, if you're looking for the maximum effect of shoot blight, you want it on at pink to start lower rate. And if you're doing the 6 to 8 ounce formula for bitter pit or honeycrisp, it would be at pink. Yeah.
Wait, you just can't mix them together in the same tank, correct?
You just don't want to be in the same tank, correct? Because the boron can affect the efficacy of the Apogee. So that's correct.
As long as if you do a separate Apogee spray and this separate cocktail spray a day apart, you should be fine. Okay.
I'd shoot to get the cocktail on a little before pink. The idea is to get them into the bud and strengthen the bud to help fruit set. So a little bit earlier is not a bad thing.
All right. So urea 4600, but this is not the urea you spread on the ground. This is a prilled urea that will dissolve readily. So that's one component, 3 pounds per 100 gallons dilute, right, Win?
Correct. It's very hard to find that, what they call it food grade urea. It's very hard to find. So most of us are just using regular urea.
Easy to find.
Oh, well, only in Massachusetts, not down here.
Well, that's a pain in the butt. That's hard to mix up. Don't do it. So regarding the boron and zinc, I mean, there's all sorts of formulated products now. You just follow the label directions, okay?
Well, you want to make sure your zinc's a chelated zinc so that you have
It's borosol, 10% boron.
I don't know
This
that product.
reacts zinc.
Yeah.
Has a little nitrogen in it too, not much.
Yeah, I personally like Solubor
So
because
the point is,
it dissolves so easy in your solution.
so doesn't this borosol. It's liquid.
You must be getting
All right.
getting funding from Loveland, yeah.
No. All right, so that's pretty straightforward, right, Win?
I'd say so. We do it every year to help fruit set.
The pre-bloom nutrient cocktail. All right.
Increased fruit set. Now, the one caveat is a lot of people, we were light, a lot of growers were light. So certainly only need it one time this year because we're expecting a pretty snowball bloom. So unless we get some bad weather during bloom, it might not be quite as critical as it is some years.
I generally recommend, one application at a minimum, and then we can go from there.
Yes.
All right, so that's that. That's simple. What did I talk about next? I think I want to talk about, I'm just curious, our bud stages are pretty early. Certainly as we go into bloom, frost or freeze is a concern because it looks like we're going to bloom early. I like to look at this climate smart farming website. Just do a Google search for climate smart farm and you'll find it. I don't know how far, but I did. I thought I refreshed this. But anyways, it's showing April 12th. This blue line is the actual minimum temperature forecast. Actually, this isn't forecast. Forecast is out here. You see that, Win?
Yeah.
So, for example, and you look on the left on April 16th, it says, wow, we're going to get down to 34. It's cooler than I thought. So we're going to have some cool temperatures. But this yellow line is below that is the 10% damage. So we're not even close, at least the current forecast, have any bud damage. No, it also says that right about here will be half-inch green to tight cluster. Actually, today is the 14th and we are tight cluster. Kind of get a feel for, is frost freeze going to be a problem? Right now, apparently it's not, actually, if I switch to Macintosh here.
Good news.
Doesn't change much. So that's all good news. I agree. I think it's a neat little thing to be looking at to, kind of keep an eye on what might be coming up. So you see way out here, it's supposed to be 38 on the 19th. They would have to get down to 25 for 10% damage in tight cluster. Okay, Win?
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you set your location. So if I'm at Belchertown. If you got another location, you can change your location. For you, Win, it might be different. New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, I'm
What
sure.
stage are you at?
I'm already early tight cluster with pink showing, so I'm further ahead for sure.
Well, it all depends what the forecast. The other thing I like to kind of occasionally peek at is this bud stage. Same website on Climate Smart Farming. You can look at the different colors here. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit. You can kind of see up here, we're in the valley, we're kind of in the blue, which says tight cluster. Win, you're still in northern New Jersey, kind of tight cluster, right?
I'd say we're it depends where you are, John. There's a big difference.
Look where the purple is. The pink bud is almost to you.
I'm almost pink tight cluster. Yeah.
The pink bud is almost to you. The pink there.
Yeah. I'm actually the top of that pink, John, is Hunterdon County. The gray area you're showing in
you're-
the upper left-hand corner of New Jersey, that's a higher elevation, and that's, some of
Right.
those areas are an hour away from where I am, so there can be a lot of
That's
variation.
blue. That's tight cluster. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's
But
pretty,
what's
looks pretty
interesting,
accurate.
John,
It
right
looks
there
pretty-
where your cursor is, where that pink is where I am. I'm bloom on peach, and I just talked to a grower up in Germantown, New York, which is not far from Albany, and he's full bloom on peach. So how could Albany be the same stage of peach as I am here in north central New Jersey? And I talked to Peter Yench today. He said Western New York, along the lake, some of those guys are in full bloom. So something's crazy on the peach side.
Well, it's all temperature related. Anyway. All right. Just wanted to tell you about that. All right. What's I going to talk about next?
While you're thinking about it, I want to mention one thing about water. Can I do that?
What does water have to do with anything right
It
now?
has to do with everything. And I think the thing your guys should remember is pH of the spray water can be key. And if you don't know what your pH is, you should check it, because if you have a high pH, if you've got some calcium soils, and my pH where I am is 8, pH of 8, most of your growth regulators don't work very well. They have a very short half-life. The pH of Captan, I mean, at pH of 8 with Captan, the half-life is like 20 minutes. So know what your spray water pH is. It's easy to sample and get an answer. And if you need to lower it, it's fairly easy to buffer the whole tank and get it down to where you're not going to have a problem with plant growth regulators and pesticides.
That's a good note, but most of our water up here is on the acid side. So
Yeah, that's great. But if you
most of it.
haven't tested it, you don't know. You can't guess. It's not one you can guess at.
You're really on that bandwagon, and I agree with you. You should test it.
Thank you.
All right, but we talked about that before at many meetings.
We did it at my meeting. I didn't do it at your meeting.
That's
so
right.
I'm swapping.
All right. I want to talk about this. Is a good time to get some pre-emergent herbicides down, right, Win? So
Yeah.
in our New England Tree Fruit Management Guide, newenglandtreefruit.org, we have, I think, a pretty comprehensive weed control section. And what I wanted to highlight kind of is for new plantings. We have a nice chart here that Renee Moran did up, talking about for new plantings. I know a lot of guys are planting. The Waffler truck was out here today. What you can use for pre and post emergent herbicides on this year's plantings. So I'm not going to go into it in detail, because you can go look at this on our tree fruit guide. Personally, I like to use this Gallery isoxaben on new plantings for broadleaf weeds.
Gallery is the best broadleaf pre-emergent.
Yeah.
If it's labeled for you in New Massachusetts, it is. It is not labeled in New York. I'm assuming most people that see this will be from your state, John, but check your state label. It is not labeled in New York. It is labeled New Jersey and Massachusetts.
But a good for this year's planting, a good mix would be Surfland and Gallery.
Yeah, I'd give you a comment, John. If you haven't already got your Surfland in inventory, there's absolutely none in the pipeline. You can't go get it. So you're really left with Prowl H2O as an equivalent.
Right. Yeah, that would be a good one. That for grasses.
There's really very little Surfland around unless it's left over somewhere. But none of my growers in 5 states can get any this spring if they didn't have it already.
Right.
I wouldn't use Simbar on a new planting. I think she had that. Is that all new plantings in this table?
You talk to Renee then.
Well, I'm talking to your growers, and Simbar would be a very risky thing on new trees.
Says use caution in first leaf. Wait for soil to settle. Use low rate. Relabel for specifics.
What's low rate is Simbar, John?
I don't use Sinbar. I use Gallery and Sureflan or Prowl.
I'm just guiding your growers. I would not be using Simbar on 1-year trees. You're rolling the dice. So
especially on sandy soil, huh?
Oh my God, you might as well kiss them goodbye.
Okay.
The 1 pound might be a low rate to somebody. When we do strawberry work, we do 1 ounce at a time. So low rate is not very definitive. I just stay away from Sinbar.
All right. Okay, that's for first year plantings. And then in healthy fruit this week, if you haven't subscribed to Healthy Fruit, remind you to go into the UMass Extension bookstore and send me your $65 so you can get on the list. But Mike Bazidow had a quick write-up in their Cornell Cooperative Extension, Eastern New York Commercial Horticulture Program. Hey, how did I do? A tree fruit alert. I just wanted to point out, I'm gonna get back to it. There are a number of pre and post-emergent herbicide products available. Some commonly used pre-emergent products. This is for after the year of planting, mostly. In apple include Allion. When am I coming through good?
Yeah, pretty good.
Matrix. Prowl. Win just warned about Sinbar. Simazine.
Well, he's got the whole list, John. He's got the whole list there, but there's different times to use that list. They're not all used at the same time for the same purpose. So
could these all be used now?
no, you wouldn't use some of them now. I go through it real quick for you if you want.
So why wouldn't you use some? Why not?
Well, Matrix is a grass herbicide, but specifically we use it for nutsedge. And we wouldn't put it on till nutsedge first emerges, which is about the third week of May. So
we don't have much nutsedge here.
What's that?
We don't really have nutsedge here.
Well, then you might probably not use Matrix. So we would look to have a broadleaf pre-emergent down and a broadleaf grass material down right now or a couple weeks ago. So your broadleafs would be 3 years or older. He's got that in there. It would be Allion, Zeus Prime. I don't see that in his list.
This is pretty common stuff, I think.
Yeah, but he's got everything mixed together. Sandia is a nutsedge material only labeled on apples. So you'd really want Allion, Chateau, or Gold would be your broadleaf materials, and really the most broad spectrum pre-emergent grass would be Prowl H2O or Surfland. You can't get Surfland. Solacam is really good, but Solacam has a tendency to run when you get rainfall. So if you've got a nice grass middle and you're on a slope, it'll wash a little bit, leach out and wash into your grass strip and take grass out. So it's a little more broad spectrum than Prowl, but it can do a little number on your turf. And then you got to get into your contacts, John. So
all right, just a second. My kind of go-to on the pre-emergent is either Allion and Chateau with Prowl. But,
okay.
There's cost differences. Yeah, Win's right. You got to look at the label, and it kind of depends what weeds you want to control. But let's.
There's also some timing, John. I just mentioned it because if you're going to follow the label, Allion needs to be on before bud break. That's the label. Chateau needs to be on before petal fall. You got a little more leeway there. Gold needs
Allion does. Wait. Allion doesn't have to be on before bud break, does it?
Right on the label. Dormant before bud break.
Allion.
I'm reading off the label, John. Zeus Prime is another one that he doesn't mention there, but it's a sulfentrazole. It's another chemistry. It also has AIM included in it. AIM is one of your post-emergent materials, so it's a pretty good combination. It's the only broadleaf pre-emergent material that actually gives some control of nutsedge, and you said that's not really an issue for you guys.
We don't have a lot of it.
Yeah, so you got 4 broadleaf materials you could rotate in, but just be conscious of the timing on the label. And the reason they have bud break is because they can cause problems when they volatilize after bud break. And you mentioned Gallery. I love Gallery.
I apologize. Apparently my internet.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, Gallery is very good broadleaf, but it's only labeled on non-bearing. So first or second leaf trees that don't have fruit is the only place you can use it.
He says down here, many materials have tree age restrictions, so follow label instructions. All right. Exactly. So what about post-emergent, Gramoxone, Paraquat?
Well, that's becoming a big issue. Big issue. I would never use Rely, and you and I have had that discussion many times because I did work on that for the company that developed Rely, which was a different company that markets it now, and it will crack bark on mature apple trees and kill peach trees. So we don't recommend it at all on tree fruit because the label says keep it off the trunk. So unless you've got a guard that you can keep it off the trunk on the tree, you're really at risk with your trees. So you're really left with Gramoxone or 2,4-D early in the season. Gramoxone, they changed the formulation. They put less active ingredient in, but some people feel that they changed the surfactant package in it, and it may be a little hotter on young trees too. So you got to be careful. 2,4-D is probably the only one that doesn't really, that I know, that really screw up the bark on young trees. But you have to worry about volatility if you use it too late, John. So, and the trouble with 2,4-D, it only gets broadleaves that are emerged. So probably one of the best things if you've got guards on the trees, I like to use it one time a year only, and that's now, is actually glyphosate Roundup, because it does get most of your broadleaves that are emerged. You can clean up leftover stuff. It'll work on suckers if they've got leaves on it. But you don't want it on the bark of young trees. You don't really want it on the bark of old trees, but young trees, and I'd say through 2 years old. It says green bark, but what does green bark mean? I think trees have to be older than 1 year before it's not green bark. So I'm careful on that one too, John.
All right, no lectures. That's enough for herbicides. Yep. No, it's a touchy subject, can be.
A
So,
couple key ones. We don't want to kill trees. They won't like us if we kill their
oh,
trees.
well, you should never be spraying herbicide on your trees.
John, but we market them through,
No, just
we put them on with a Phil Brown. There's no other way unless you
Uh,
overlap the trunk to get the weeds between the trees. So every grower applies it that way.
there's
So
no,
just
there's no. I was just seeing a grower this morning putting it on with a gator, being very careful. All right.
he
So this is I
he or
just
she
took
would
this
be the
this
exception to
afternoon.
the
This is
rule.
Honeycrisp. It was a little farther along than I thought. All right.
Yeah,
Is that tight cluster?
yep.
So that's the good time to put these nutrients on. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to start doing a little more weed ID. All right. Anybody know what this is, Win?
I don't know which one you're pointing to, John.
There's one weed there. This is smooth
seeing-
bed straw.
Oh, that's one. You had the whole slot. You had the whole deal up. It just came up.
Can you see it now?
Looks like wild
is-
carrot, I think.
Oh my God. This is smooth bed straw.
I don't know that
Smooth
one.
bed straw. This is a perennial weed, which I understand is fairly hard to control. So probably for smooth bed straw, you'd want to use glyphosate.
Yeah, and
Win?
if you have hard to control broadleaves or glyphosate resistant broadleaves, that's why some of those other materials on Mike's list are really add-ons to either paraquat or glyphosate, and those would be AIM, Venue, or Matrix. They're meant to be additional materials to add to those for better burn down of broadleaves.
What about glyphosate and Venue together?
Yeah, that's exactly right. All three of those materials, AIM, Matrix, Venue, are meant to put with 2,4-D, Gramoxone, or Roundup, glyphosate. They do a nice job of add-on.
Right.
Especially, they all came out of the field corn business, John, where they needed something extra to control mare's tail. We can't control mare's tail with Roundup anymore, and that's a big issue in orchards. So if you have mare's tail, one of those materials added to your burn down will help you control it.
We don't have much of that. All right, what's this? Annual Fleabane.
There you go.
So this is an annual weed that has already come up from seed at some point in time, late last fall or the winter, right?
2,4-D probably should whack that one. And remember,
Why
if
don't
you're
I have?
using 2,4-D, only the amine formulation. And actually, there's a new 2,4-D product that is not labeled in New Jersey. I can't remember the name, but there actually is a new formulation, John, for tree fruit that's less volatile than the amine formulation. We'll have to
So
look
it's
that up.
it's too late to get this with a pre-emergent unless you've got a
No, but I
pre-emergent
would bet
has
2,4-D would do a pretty good job, or glyphosate, yeah.
or glyphosate. Yep. But this is an annual weed.
No, once they're
When's-
emerged, you gotta use a material. John, let me ask
Castor-
you a question. Are most of your
No,
growers
no,
putting
no,
pre-emergence in the fall and then coming back in the spring, or
no.
they're
no.
trying to get it all in the spring?
Most of them don't have time in the fall. It gets too cold up here. Okay.
I
So
see.
we're not going to go into that because
It'll greatly
what
enhance your
about
weed
Ben?
control if you do.
what about Cazaron in the fall though? Granular.
Casseron, the liquid Casseron is very easy to apply uniformly. It's probably a little pricier than some of the others, but it has to be put on in the cold. It has to be below 50 degrees. And it gets a lot of broadleaf weeds and grasses that some of the other materials are a little weak on. So it's actually a
Granular
good-
cat. What about granular Cazaron?
well, granular is hard to apply uniformly is the problem. So that's why we like the CS liquid formulation.
All right, Win, you know what this is.
That's the wild carrot.
That's wild carrot. I didn't. I'm going to try and learn more about weeds. I didn't realize it's a biennial, which means
That's
it
why
took
it's hard.
two.
That's why it's harder to control for sure. Yeah,
That's correct. It took 2 years for this plant to come up from seed, right?
I think that's
Um,
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to find, what would be a good control for this. Now, this turns into Queen Anne's lace, right, Win?
I believe that's correct. You know
Yeah.
more about this one than me. You studied this a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to
Now,
learn up. It's Queen
Matrix.
Anne's lace.
I don't know that Matrix is going to control the emerged weed. Matrix does
No,
have
like-
a little burn down, but I wouldn't bet that it's going to burn down wild carrot.
No, but
that's
But if you were putting a pre-emergent on every year, you should keep the biennial weeds from germinating and coming up. Once it's come up like this now, you got to use 2,4-D, right, Win?
well, exactly.
Or
Yeah.
glyphosate. But if you let this come up and go to seed as Queen Anne's lace, and it's going 2 years later, it's going to show up as this, right?
There you go.
Also, I did read that Cazaron was supposed to be good on this. All right. I think that's all I got.
Excellent,
I'm gonna
John.
stop.
Good
Stop my
update.
Screen share. I hope I'm still recording. Win, thank you.
I thought I'd sit outside so everybody could see my orchard as well.
Got some good insight.
I've got 300 test trees out here, so I thought you might want to see what I'm doing, John.
Now that I thanked them, I lost them.
No, I'm here.
You're not coming through, Win. Sorry.
No, I'm here.
All right. Thank you. Good night. That's all up. Record this and put it up later on YouTube. I win.
See you, John.
Thanks.